that's a Sactown thing. Talking about us, it's a bounce out thing. Must they forgot we some Sacramento Kings. Whole squad going crazy, yeah, we back with it. Northern Cali going crazy, one sack winning. If you doubted us then, ain't no backspinning. This is real right here, ain't no catfishing. So tell me what you see now. Coming down the lane off the rebound. It's 9-16 now. Look towards the sky like the beam now. Tell them like the beam, like the beam now. You can tell them like the beam now. Tell them like the beam now. You can tell them like the beam now. Tell them like the beam, like the beam now. You can tell them like the beam now. Tell them like the beam now. If you reppin' that Kings like the beam now. Sac crowd, make sure everyone knows. Let me tell you how this thing really goes. Yeah, we travel deep, whether we home or on the road, we lit. You don't want that smoke, we the team of the year. We shaking things over here, don't doubt, we believe over here. We don't bleed over here. And let me just speak real clear, only deal with real kings over here. So tell me what you see now. Coming down the lane off the rebound. It's 9-16 now. Look toward the sky like the beam now. Tell them like the beam, like the beam now. You can tell them like the beam now. Tell them like the beam now. You can tell them like the beam now. Tell them like the beam, like the beam now. You can tell them like the beam now. Tell them like the beam now. If you reppin' that Kings like the beam now.
Welcome to Royal Rebounds TV with Calvin and Barry. Just two crazy fans of the Sacramento Kings and they sharing their opinion. So be sure that you subscribe. It's for the fans, by the fans. Whether you chilling on the couch or wildin' in the stands. For laid back conversations about the Kings, subscribe here. Staying down until we come up thinking this gon' be our year. We're here drinking beer, talking about the Kings. Be sure you subscribe so you can hear that bell ring. Yeah.
What's up, Kings fans? Welcome back to Royal Rebounds, the Sacramento Kings YouTube channel for fans, by fans. Hopefully you're all enjoying your weekend. Happy Sunday, everyone. It's been officially 1 week since the Sacramento Kings season came to an end. But that's okay. We still got plenty of basketball. Calvin, it's the NBA playoffs. We're in the middle of the second round right now. We got a lot of awesome matchups to talk about. West Coast, East Coast. Also, we're going to talk about some new Kings news, some awards that were handed out, and then what to look forward to in the next couple months. But first off, welcome in, everybody. Welcome in. Please don't forget to smash up that like button, hit that subscribe button. And, hey, if you're rewatching this video, if you're not watching it live, that's because you didn't hit that notification bell and you didn't know that we were going live for this video. So make sure you hit that little notification bell as well. And it will remind you every single time we put out a new video. Anyway, shout out to everybody here in the chat. Bouncer, Alfie Man is here. Afghan, Jeff the Lefty is here. Good to see you all. Welcome in. And, of course, Calvin is here. Calvin, feels like it's been a while since we've been in the studio together.
It has been a while. Feels like an eternity, kind of, in a way. But it also feels like it just happened. I don't know. But like you said, still a lot going on. Basketball never sleeps. Good to see all you guys out there again. Miss you guys. Wish we had Kings game to talk about, but that's okay.
That's okay. So, Calvin, I mean, before we get into everything, you've had about a week off. I think both of us have had about a week off here on the channel, not watching Kings games. Of course, we're watching other basketball games. But what have you been up to? Has it been pretty nice to have a little bit of a break?
It's been pretty mellow, man. Yeah, I've just been going to work and coming home, relaxing, cooking dinner, obviously watching basketball. I will never not do that, no matter what is going on in my life. I can't not do that, as much as my girlfriend probably hates it at sometimes. But yeah, I'm hurt that the Kings are not in it. I'm still happy and proud of what the team did this year.
Yep.
But it is also a little bit refreshing to be able to watch a playoff game and not be so stressed out and so invested in it, right? And just appreciate, like, the two games we had today. Phenomenal games, both of them. Really great games to watch. So I am really happy as a basketball fan that I get to just kind of sit back and watch some great basketball.
Yeah, very, very true. For me, it took me a couple days to get back from Vegas. I didn't get back until Tuesday late. And then, yeah, I've just been working, having fun. And, yeah, it has been nice to watch basketball and not be stressed out and not that this channel is a burden or anything like that. I don't want it ever to feel like that. But I'm just saying, getting home from work, sitting down, popping open a beer, watching a game, and then when it's over, you're just done is actually pretty nice. But, hey, we love talking with you all. We love talking about basketball, and that's what we're here for today. So, Calvin, before we talk about the Kings, because I definitely want to talk about that, let's talk about some of these matchups we got going on. So, first off, 2 games yesterday. We had the New York Knicks take on the Miami Heat, and then we had the Golden State Warriors taking on the L.A. Lakers. And then as far as the other series, we have Boston and Philadelphia. That game did happen today. And Denver against Phoenix. Of course, the winners of both of these series go to the conference finals, and then the winners of those go to the NBA finals. So we're getting very
down
close
to the nitty-gritty
here towards the end of the season. And we got, of course, some really good basketball teams. So, Calvin, you want to kind of give everyone a little breakdown of where each series is at?
Yeah, I mean, it's been kind of all over the map, right? Lots of blowouts, a bunch of really tightly contested games. I don't think there's any series right now where you can really clearly say that one team has that far and away the upper hand over the other.
Patrick?
The Lakers are up 2-1. They just had a 30-point win, but they lost by 25 plus the game before that. So I think every series right now is pretty wide open. It's funny to hear after every game, even game one in every series, people always want to say, oh, it's over, this team's going to win, blah, 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 for X, Y, and Z. And you can never really make that assumption after one playoff game in a series. But Miami currently up 2-1. They've had some pretty dominating wins recently in the playoffs. Obviously took out the number 1 seed Bucks. Jimmy Butler has been simply incredible. In fact, the Knicks' only win in this series came when Jimmy didn't play. So that doesn't bode well for New York fans.
You don't say.
Golden State and the Lakers 2-1 as well in favor of Los Angeles, coming off that 30-point win in Game 3 in L.A. And then the 2 series today are really where it's at. Very tightly contested. Boston and Philadelphia and Denver, Phoenix, both tied 2 apiece after the results today. Philly winning by 1 in overtime in a game that Boston really let slip through their fingers. They were down double digits, came all the way back with a huge run in the fourth quarter, and then maybe some late game execution kind of cost them at the end of this one, both in regulation and in overtime. And then the Denver-Phoenix series has really all of a sudden become must-see TV since it went to Phoenix. Devin Booker has been arguably the best player in the playoffs so far with his performances. Jokic goes for 53 tonight, but it wasn't enough. They lose by 5. Series tied 2-2 going back to Denver and going back to Boston.
Yeah, he did a lot. You mentioned 53 points tonight, but he did turn the ball over when they were down 3 with like 20-something seconds left, so that was quite unfortunate. But, Calvin, let's talk about the Knicks Heat series first. This Knicks team, similar to the Sacramento Kings, has not had a lot of playoff success for a long time.
That is true.
And so they're feeling pretty good. Their fan base is feeling great that they're making it to the second round. But, of course, Miami Heat is feeling incredible, which is a big turnaround from just a couple weeks ago when we hear that Tyler Hero broke his hand and everyone on TV was like, oh, without Tyler Hero, they're done. They're absolutely done. They end up beating the number 1 seed, the Milwaukee Bucks, your favorite to go to the NBA Finals this year. I know you're not betting on them again. But Miami's looked incredibly good. Jimmy Butler has looked incredibly good. Yes. I know you said maybe Devin Booker's looking like the best player in the playoffs.
I know. It's hard not to say Jimmy is there right now.
I don't know. It seems like sometimes Jimmy is just on a mission, like we saw in the bubble. Maybe he's on a mission this year to make it to the finals. Yes, they are up 2-1 right now. The next game is tomorrow, so we'll see what happens there. But, Calvin, who do you think this series favors matchup-wise?
I think it favors Miami. Look, I think they have the best overall player in the series. Jalen Brunson has been really, really good all year for New York, and he's doing everything that he can in this series. But if you look at the Knicks, they were last in the NBA in assists per game this year. They play a lot of isolation. They really love to give it to their guys, Brunson and Randall, and let them go one-on-one. Mm-hmm. The Heat are a really good defensive team. They've gotten healthy, for more or less. I know Tyler Hero is out, but Kyle Lowry's come back a lot stronger. They moved him to the bench, which seems to be a good move. Jimmy Butler's played out of this world. Bam Adebayo's been really good in the middle, but what the Heat have done is they've taken the paint away from New York, which is where they love to attack, and they forced this Knicks team, which is not a great outside shooting team, to be jump shooters. They've completely taken away Julius Randle's interior game. He's really struggled in this series, and that, I think, is the X factor right now when you combine that with how well Jimmy Butler's playing. The Heat have been very up and down all season long shooting the three.
Yep.
They've shot it much, much better in the playoffs. They lost Tyler Hero, but Max Strus has been shooting the ball really well. Duncan Robinson all of a sudden comes in and starts knocking down threes. The Heat are that good defensively that if they can hit outside shots, they're good enough to beat anyone in a tight game with somebody like Jimmy Butler. And I think defensively, their strategy on walling off the paint is going to be the difference here in this series.
Yeah, shout out to Patrick here. Patrick, we will be talking about the Kings and their draft pick here after we wrap up all these games. But I see someone here in the chat, Bouncer, talking about Jalen Brunson. 20 points for him in yesterday's match. He's looked incredibly good. Obviously, we know his dad is coaching there with the Knicks. I mean, what's the difference in this year versus last year's Knicks team? Is Jalen Brunson the only difference? Because a lot of very familiar faces, similar guys, yet the team, I guess, on paper, win-wise is much, much different. What's the major difference with this team?
Well, I think Jalen Brunson is the major difference, right? I mean, the Knicks have been looking for that go-to guard, to complement Randle ever since he's been in New York. Mm-hmm. They've got a bunch of young players as well that I think are slowly developing. I was really high on Obi Toppin coming out of the draft a couple of years ago when he was at Dayton. He's the perfect example of a guy that kind of needed a little bit of time to adjust to the NBA game. He's become a much better outside shooter, which is helping him stretch the floor. His athleticism is bringing a lot to the table on defense as well. Emmanuel Quickley was a Sixth Man of the Year candidate, another really young player on this team. So I think the major difference is definitely Jalen Brunson, but it's also these young guys getting a little bit better and more confident.
Yeah, Josh Hart's been huge for them.
That was a great acquisition as well.
RJ Barrett has definitely matured a little bit. Then you mentioned Brunson. Obviously, Randle is the same guy that we know, and then Mitchell Robinson as well. I got to tell you, Calvin, I'm favoring the Heat in this series. I really like what they've been doing. I love the acquisition of Kevin Love. Thought that was a beautiful acquisition for them. And then kicking Kyle Lowry down to the bench I thought was pretty important. He struggled last year in the playoffs, which really hurt them. I really like what they're doing right now. I don't know if I can say definitively they're going to the NBA Finals, but I like them over the Knicks.
Yeah, they're not a team, definitely not an 8 seed that you would want to run into at any point here. They still won their division this season despite having to be in the play-in tournament. And, like you said, Jimmy Butler, when the lights shine brightest, he seems to just have that switch. And you can just hear the confidence in his voice, when he talks pregame and postgame.
Oh, yeah.
He just sounds like one of those, elite players in the NBA that knows we've got the advantage and we're going to take it to them.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, Miami's up 2-1 right now. Calvin, how many games do you think this thing takes to close out?
I think Miami will close it out in 6. I like them to win at home.
Okay.
In a 6 game. I think New York is good enough to get another game in this series. But I think Miami will close it out eventually.
There you go. I love Miami. I like that they're playing red hot right now. I think everything's clicking for them. I think that's really important. Like you just saw in the previous series, it doesn't matter what seed you are. Whoever's playing better at the moment usually goes on to win the series. And I think Miami's playing incredibly, incredibly well at the moment. They're, I guess, hitting the right gear at the right time. Okay, let's talk about yesterday's second game. And this is the Battle of California, Calvin, because we know the Sacramento
new Battle
Kings
of California
and the LA Lakers or LA Clippers are both eliminated. So you have the Lakers and the Golden State Warriors. Not going to lie, Calvin, I got a lot of feelings about this season or about this series, very mixed feelings. I mean, you have the LA Lakers, who I don't like to root for, and you have the Golden State Warriors, who have the most annoying fan base in sports. and just beat my Sacramento Kings in 7 games. So, Calvin, let's break down this series a little bit.
Well, this series has been massive momentum shifts, right? I mean, the first game was very tightly contested. I came away from that game thinking, man, Golden State made 21 threes in this game, shot it really, really well from outside, had 3 guys make 6 threes or more in that game and still ended up losing by 5. It just seemed impossible for me to think that Golden State was going to have enough to win this series after that game. But again, that's why I say you can't really make any definitive predictions or expectations after one game of a series. It's all about adjustments. The Lakers came out and adjusted really well in game 2, the Warriors did, I should say. Ended up with a huge win. Klay Thompson was amazing. But then the Lakers did the same thing, came back and took it right to them. The difference for me in this series is, I'm sure it's pretty easy to see for most people, is Anthony Davis.
Yeah.
I mean, he plays really, really well in games 1 and 3, and they win both games, one of them by 30.
Mm-hmm.
And then he basically is a no-show in game 2, and that's the game that the Warriors are able to run away with. So it's a very contrasting styles type series. You've got one team that loves to play small, free-flowing offense, very hard to stick with. Another team that is much bigger, likes to play inside a lot. Anthony Davis is the X factor to me in this series. I think if he shows up and has, games like he's capable of doing and what we would expect from Anthony Davis, the Warriors are going to have to play damn near perfect in order to win. But as we've seen, not just in this series, all playoffs long, Anthony Davis has been up, down, up, down, up, down. So very, very strange to see a guy that most of us think of as a superstar in this league be so inconsistent. But if he plays to his ability, I think the Lakers will come away winning this series.
Yeah, he's definitely played consistent defensively, but the offensive game is where he has had some inconsistencies. The LA Lakers, much like the Miami Heat, are a play-in team that upset their first-round matchup. They took down the Memphis Grizzlies, the number 2 seed, just like Miami took down Milwaukee. Like I said with Miami, the Lakers are the ones that are playing right now. They are firing on all cylinders. Of course, the defense looks amazing. And, hey, don't get mad at me here, but I do have to say I'm happy that Monty McNair won GM of the Year. We'll definitely talk about that.
Yep.
But, dude, Rob Pelinka should have won GM of the Year because the way that he changed around this Lakers team has been absolutely incredible. The defensive numbers, the fact that they're in a position now to actually move on to the Western Conference Finals to beat the reigning champion Golden State Warriors. He did all that, and then I was looking at their books at the end of the year. It's looking nice, dude. It's looking real nice.
He made some excellent moves. I mean, the only thing that I can really argue with that is he did his job for half the year, and Monty's been doing it for the entire year, right? Like,
I'm not taking anything from Monty.
Made the moves in the offseason, the trades, trade for Kevin Huerter, signed Malik Monk, all of that, and continued, with making the right acquisitions and pressing the right buttons throughout the course of the entire season. But I agree with you. There's nobody who did his team better than Rob Pelinka at the trade deadline, and the Lakers have the best record in the NBA since. So.
Yep. And, of course, you have LeBron James on that team, right? A guy that's won many championships, many basketball games. What is this, year 20 right now? And he's playing incredibly, incredibly well. So you always have a chance when you have a LeBron James on your team. But also another acquisition is a healthy Anthony Davis. Yes, you said that he's been inconsistent on the offensive end of the floor throughout the playoffs. However, he's healthy right now. And when he's healthy, this team is a much different animal. We'll see if he can remain healthy. But honestly, in my opinion, the Lakers are too big for the Golden State Warriors. I don't think the Warriors can match up. Kevon Looney, shout out to him. He's still playing incredibly well.
He's a warrior.
Great
Literally.
rebounder. But the LA Lakers are a much bigger, much more skilled basketball team. And they can make threes and they can fight inside. Plus, the defense is really what's going to make a difference.
Yeah, I think what it comes down to is the Lakers' margin for error is just a little bit less than, or a little bit more than the Golden State Warriors because of the size. I think because of depth too. I mean, the Warriors, we all think of as a deep team, right? But Jordan Poole is not playing as well in this postseason as he did last year.
Yep.
Maybe, you could argue that Steve Kerr's rotation needs to be switched up a little bit. Kuminga hasn't gotten a ton of minutes, but they're not getting the type of production from their role players or semi-star players that they got last year and route to running all the way to the NBA Finals and last series. And the Lakers are, plain and simple. I mean, D'Angelo Russell, he is effectively a role player on this team, even though he is a former All-Star in the NBA. He's played really, really well. Rui Hachimura has given them amazing minutes off the bench. Austin Reeves has been really good. And when you have the defense, like you mentioned, that they have, Anthony Davis back there anchoring the whole thing, I think that they have a little bit more room for error than the Warriors do.
Yeah, I think so. But, hey, like I said, injuries are going to be key in this series. Yep. As long as the Lakers are healthy, I'm picking them to go to the Western Conference Finals. Hell, I'm picking them to go to the NBA Finals. And I don't like to say that, but just looking at basketball, looking at the makeup of these teams, defense wins championships. This team has had the best defense in the league since the trade deadline, and they're playing incredibly, incredibly well. Yeah, but like I said,
Jared Vanderbilt deserves a lot of credit also. A name that's not going to get mentioned very often or maybe does, by people that pay close attention to the Lakers. But his defense on Steph has been really, really great
100%
in this series.
And like I said, anything could happen to the Lakers at any moment, and I'll favor the Warriors, right? If Anthony Davis is not healthy, if he's not available to play, the edge shifts over to that Golden State Warriors team who – has gotten incredibly lucky over the years in terms of injuries on other teams. Yes, they did lose the championship.
If you got a dynasty, you're going to have a little bit of luck.
Very true. They did lose the championship to the Raptors due to an injury to Klay Thompson and an injury to Kevin Durant. However, they've won multiple championships, and they've gotten lucky in multiple series, as it does take, like you said, to create a dynasty to get this far. So we'll see what happens in this series. But like I said, I currently have the Lakers winning.
I agree.
All right, let's move on. Series number 3. This is the Eastern Conference. This was the first game today, Calvin. This is Boston versus Philadelphia. This is an interesting series, right?
Very.
We have Doc Rivers, last head coach to win a title with the Boston Celtics, currently as the head coach of the 76ers. You have Embiid, just won his first NBA MVP award. You have James Harden, who's looking like vintage James Harden, at least in the past couple games. And then you have the team that just lost in the NBA Finals in the Boston Celtics that have two of the best wings in the NBA. They fired their head coach, so they're on a brand new first-year head coach, and they're looking pretty good as well. This series is currently tied 2-2. The next game is in Boston. Calvin, give me your thoughts on this series.
This has been really a fun series to watch. I still am going to give the edge to Boston in this series. I mean, James Harden has been really, really great for half the games. I mean, he had games 2 and 3 were actually 2 of the worst games of his career. He shot like 17% from the field in those 2 games combined. But in their 2 wins, he's got a combined 87 points. However, the problem for Philadelphia is they won both of those games by a combined total of 5 points. They won by 1 today in overtime, and they won by 4 in game 1, and it took 45 from James Harden. They didn't have Embiid in that game, which I get, but Boston is just, they're a deeper team. They're a more well-balanced team, more well-rounded. They had 6 guys in double figures today. Philadelphia has to get these Herculean, heroic efforts from Embiid and Harden, I think, in order to stay close, because Boston is so good defensively and they're such a great three-point shooting team. They can kill you from everywhere on the floor, every single one of their guys. Tatum and Brown have been really great, but they also make great decisions with the ball, and they get guys like Derek White and Marcus Smart and Al Horford, who's been amazing.
Yep.
Again, I mean, talk about an ageless wonder. We always say LeBron is, but Al Horford just continues to play great basketball year in and year out. So I still give the edge to the Celtics because of the fact that I think, again, Philadelphia has to play so amazingly well on offense and get such great performances out of their main guys, whereas Boston has the luxury of being able to spread it around. And in today's game, I thought Boston really messed it up at the end.
They did.
First of all, Marcus Smart gets a wide open 3 to win. He's definitely good enough to hit that shot. They could have easily ended it in regulation. And then in overtime, that bucket the three that James Harden hits in the corner, they come out with Marcus Smart guarding Embiid originally off the inbounds when Al Horford had done a great job on him in the fourth quarter. I don't know why you did that. You got the switch action. Tatum has to switch onto Embiid. And then, Jaylen Brown has to come double, leaving Harden wide open in the corner. So I don't think that the Celtics had great execution at the end, not to mention they let way too much time go off on that final possession, didn't get the three off in time. So you go back and you look at the film, and I think Boston says we should easily be up 3-1 in this series already. I think that they're going to win eventually.
Yeah, I agree. I think that Boston is a better team. I think they have better chemistry. I think they have better players. I think they're a little bit more well-rounded, and they have a much better defense. I mean, this is a team that had one of the best defenses, if not the best defense in the NBA last season after the trade deadline. It's funny, Calvin. I mean, I'm seeing a lot of similarities between last year's Boston team and this year's Lakers team.
Yeah.
A team that after the trade deadline went on a huge run, surrounded by defense, right? It was based on the fact that their defense was incredibly, incredibly good. It went to the NBA Finals. I think the Lakers do that. And Calvin, I think the Boston Celtics go to the NBA Finals to face the LA Lakers. You mentioned Tatum and Brown, incredible players. And in terms of the 76ers, it just seems like they just keep trying the same thing every year, right? It's not working. We're just going to try it again. Yes, they have James Harden, but I think that he would need to be the best player in this series and the best player on his team to lead this team to the Eastern Conference Finals. Yes, he had 42 points today, but I don't know if he can do that every single game.
Yeah.
Calvin, I definitely want to talk about whether a team can win with a center being their best player. But I think we should wrap up this Denver-Phoenix series first. So I'm taking Boston over Philadelphia. I don't know how many games it's going to take because, like today, it could have easily been up 3-1. Now it's 2-2. But I got Boston moving on.
I got Boston in 6.
Okay.
As well. Yeah.
All right, let's talk about Denver and Phoenix. This game just ended. Series is also tied 2-2. Kevin Durant, 36 points tonight, 53 for Jokic. Turns the ball over late. When they were down 3, they had a chance to tie the game. Obviously, they lose. How are you feeling about this series, Cal?
This series has been absolutely wild. It looked like maybe Phoenix wasn't going to have enough. Depth has been talked about a lot with them since they made the all-in trade for Kevin Durant. They lost a lot of really good pieces in that deal, Cam Johnson and Mikal Bridges, being the two biggest ones. So do they have enough, outside of Booker and Durant to get past a lot of these really great teams in the West? And then all of a sudden Booker and Durant are saying, well, maybe we are enough to get it done. They've played absolutely incredibly over the last couple of games. I think it was 86 combined points or something like that in game 3 between the two of them. Booker has, honestly, watching him, he looks like Kobe out there to me. That's how good he's playing right now. But I agree with Phoenix. I think Denver is overall the better team, deeper team. I think they're going to come out eventually on top. But this is a really fun series to watch because the execution offensively has just been incredible between Murray, Jokic, Durant, and Booker. I think Phoenix made a big adjustment when the series moved back to when it went to Arizona for the first time. They started to play a little bit faster, trying to score before Denver could get set defensively, and I think that was a huge move for them. You could see them pushing the ball very, very hard every time. And, of course, if your best players are going to go off like that, you're going to be in with a chance to win every game. But I think Denver is ultimately going to come out on top. Too much inside.
Yeah, this is a tough one for me, Calvin. These teams seem very evenly matched, as it does show, 2-2 now currently for the series. But I'm going to go kind of similar to what I'm saying for Golden State LA series. It's all going to depend on health, right? Denver has dealt with a ton of injuries in the past couple years to Murray. Jokic has been extremely healthy. But to Murray and to Michael Porter Jr., and Phoenix just picked up Kevin Durant. They traded a bunch for him. Is he going to be healthy? We've seen him deal with some injuries, but he fell down warming up for them. Chris Paul is currently out due to injuries. What's DeAndre Ayton going to do? We know about the big blow up between him and Coach Monty Williams last year in the playoffs. The dude has looked pretty passive to me this series. So I think health is going to be huge for this series, but it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. I mean, I think that Denver probably is the better team here. They do have better chemistry, but this is going to be a tight one for me.
I think it's going to be tight, too. It'll be very interesting to see if anything else happens to Nikola Jokic after the little dust up on the sideline today with the Suns owner.
Yeah.
A lot of people are already saying that he needs to be suspended and all this stuff.
If he's suspended, they lose.
I mean, yeah, well, if he gets suspended for one game.
Yeah, they lose that game.
They lose that game, I think, for sure. But they could still win the series. It'll just be interesting to see what the NBA does about it.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. I mean, if you watch the replay, it looks like Jokic grabs the ball, the owner reaches for the ball, and there's some kind of contact there, and then Jokic kind of dude, he's so big.
I know,
he
really
like
doesn't
this.
do much.
He just goes like this, and the owner
Yeah.
flies out of the way. It's not okay to make contact with a fan. If it's an owner, a fan, whatever, it does not okay. But also at the same time, if you're a fan or an owner, you shouldn't be reaching for the basketball. You shouldn't be standing up on the sidelines. So
and another fan gets ejected for that very reason, reaching out and trying to push.
Yeah.
I mean, he doesn't really push Jokic, but he taps him on the arm or whatever.
They don't do that to the owner.
And they get him. Well, you can't really eject the owner.
They're lucky Russell Westbrook wasn't involved here because
oh my God, I know, right?
Flipped out.
He definitely would have. And shout out to Nikola Jokic because he really, didn't make a big deal out of any of that from start to finish.
He doesn't care.
He never cares, which is, I guess, a good and a bad thing.
How long is CP3 out?
I've heard at least through Game 5. I mean, I don't think they really know for sure yet. They're trying to get him ready to go, but I think he definitely misses at least one more game.
I think Devin Booker needs to be the best player on the court for them to win this series.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
He has to by far be the best player on the court to win this series. Better than Kevin Durant.
He's doing everything that he can.
Yeah, that's true. So this is a question that...
I mean, the dude's missed like 9 of his last 40-something shot attempts. Like, it's just insane how efficient he's been.
So here's a question that kind of I was thinking about when I was talking about Boston and Philadelphia, and I guess it applies in this situation as well. And, I mean, you have Joel Embiid, just one MVP, first one. Then you have Denver, Jokic, two MVPs in a row or 3?
Two
MVPs in a row. I think they're both the best player on their basketball team, right? Calvin, when's the last time a team won a championship with their best player being a center?
Well, a lot of people would say Shaq in the 2000s with the Lakers. Personally, I think Kobe was the best player on that team. So I will say Hakeem Olajuwon back-to-back 94-95 with the Houston Rockets was the last time.
So these are two teams that are, it's not the first round anymore. It's the second round. I mean, they haven't made it to the conference finals or anything like that. But both of them, they're both following that model of, follow our best player. He's the center. Do you think that hurts them? And how? I'll let you go first. But, does having your center be your best player, does that cap you?
No, I wouldn't say that. I think that in order, with the way that the game has gone, when you initially asked me this question earlier today, I went back and I was looking at, all the past NBA champions, right?
Yeah.
And it just goes to show how the game has changed, right? Because if you go back to the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, I mean, a lot of times centers were the best players of those teams. You had Kareem, who was the Bucks, and the Lakers. You had all these great centers. You can even go back to George Mikan, which I know doesn't really make a lot of sense comparing, but it just shows how the game has shifted and how athletes are better today. The total value of a player, it has changed a lot. The style of game has changed a lot. So I don't think that it hurts you to have your best player as your center, but that center has to be, Hall of Fame worthy, I think, in order for that to work. You can't be a kind of a middle of the road team with a good center. You still have to have the complete package to win. Yeah. It takes more than just one dominant player, one great player to win in the league.
I feel like it handicaps you. I really do. And maybe in the old school NBA, having a center as your best player didn't handicap you as much as it does now, but I feel like it really does handicap you. I feel like the best teams, the best players are wing players. And, it kind of goes back to the old Sacramento Kings where DeMarcus Cousins was the best player on that squad. And I remember talking with a ton of people like, hey, this team is never going to win anything big like this. And yes, you could say it's because of Cousins' attitude and all that stuff. But I was like, no, just fundamentally, I think having your center be your best player handicaps your team in terms of they're not going to lock down somebody on the perimeter when you need to stop. They're generally not going to take the last shot. Yes, you could say Jokic could, Cousins could, stuff like that, could take a three to win the game. But I just think that they're not as involved in as many plays as a wing player would be. And, I mean, maybe this is a horrible analogy, but I'm going to throw it to football, and I'm going to say, are you better off, are you going to win more titles if your best player is a quarterback or a wide receiver, right? Because if your best player is a wide receiver, he's great at catching the ball, but he can't throw it to himself. And maybe this is a bad analogy, but I'm just saying, like, I think positions really matter in terms of success. And I think if your best player is a wing player, you're going to win a lot more than if your best player is a center.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with that necessarily. I just think there are, in terms of basketball talent and ability, a player that is 6'4" to 6'8" or whatever is almost always going to be better than players, even the greatest players that are over 7 feet tall, just due to their physical abilities, right? Talent level is another thing. Skill is another thing. And that's why I think, for guys like Jokic and Embiid, you still can win with those guys being your best players. But it just really, it changes the dynamic of how you build the team around them, right? Like, you look at a team like Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
They're going all wings. Like Phoenix says, it's a wing-driven league. That's the future, right? Yeah, he's not their best player, though.
Not yet.
And who knows if he's really a true center either, right? Like, he's, again, one of those kind of hybrid play. Victor Wembanyama, is he a real center? Not really, right? Like, the days of the true, back it down in the paint center are kind of gone at this point.
Well, some people in the chat mentioned Tim Duncan.
Also not a center, power forward.
Okay.
Maybe the greatest power forward ever.
Because we had this debate earlier when it was like, well, Anthony Davis is not a center, right?
Yeah.
Versus Jokic. No one's arguing that Jokic is not a center.
Absolutely.
Right? No one's arguing that Embiid is not a center.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's tough, man. So, I mean, Jokic and Embiid, they're both incredible players, but they're a little different, right?
Very.
Which minus everybody else from the team, which playing style of Embiid or Jokic you think has a higher ceiling, having them being your best player?
Oh man, I mean, I'd go with Jokic. I think just because he has not that Embiid, can't pass or he made a great pass today to James Harden for the game winner, right? Yeah. Being doubled, but I just think offensively, you're able to do a lot more with a guy like Jokic than you are with Embiid. Embiid is a tremendous player, dominant player, a guy that can, really put a team on his back. But when it comes to, breaking down defense, what you're able to do with the rest of the players on your team, the sets that you run, you definitely have more at your disposal with a guy like Jokic than you do with Embiid. It just I think it matters more the personnel that you surround Embiid with because of that, as opposed to the guys that you get around Jokic, because he will make other guys more better and more, or not more better, but more effective than Embiid can.
So let's add the rest around them. What team here has a higher ceiling? Denver Nuggets, Philadelphia 76ers.
Oh, I would definitely say Denver for a couple of reasons. One, I think that Philadelphia has tried so many different combinations already, right? Yeah. In a short amount of time. They had Jimmy Butler. They got rid of him. They had Ben Simmons. They got rid of him. They're always shuffling in and out these new stars, and they've changed completely their role players a lot as well. Denver is stuck with, for the most part, a core group of guys that are still young, and even though they haven't really achieved, I think that Denver can be the best team in the NBA if they're healthy too. Like that's one of the things that has really held them back, right? Michael Porter Jr., Jamal Murray, major injuries. Those are two of their three best players. So I love the additions that they made in the offseason, guys like KCP and Bruce Brown, adding that versatile defense on the wing, as well as guys that are capable three-point shooters. And Bruce Brown's a really well-rounded player all over. So I think that Denver has slightly a higher ceiling than Philadelphia does.
That's a really, really tough question.
I give youth a little bit of an edge there, too. And I love Maxey. I think he's a great player.
Yeah, that's a really, really tough question because I think if this was a few years ago, maybe you'd have a different answer, with James Harden. But, yeah, that's it. That's really interesting. All right, I want to go back to Heat series real quick against the Knicks. Can the Heat win it all without Tyler Hero, Calvin?
Oh, man. Can they win it all? I don't know. That's going to be pretty tough. I wouldn't put anything past playoff Jimmy, but or Himmy, as they call him.
Himmy Butler.
I just love Jimmy Butler so much. He's one of my favorite players in the league. But the idea that they're going to be able to go through, a team like a Boston or even a Philadelphia, good defensive teams, they don't have the greatest matchups for those series, and especially if you get into the finals against
What's up, Lane?
Anthony Davis. Bam Adebayo is a great player and a great defender, but he can only do so much on guys like AD and Embiid. So I think it's going to be very, very tough for Miami to run all the way to an NBA title. But if they keep hitting that outside shot, I mean, they're good enough to string together a bunch of wins. So Miami
reminds me of a boat with a bunch of holes in it. And they're just plugging up the holes faster than the water's seeping in, and they're floating. They're good. If they can quickly plug the holes fast enough, maybe their boat will make it to the finals. But as soon as they slow down, those holes are going to show up. No Tyler Hero. And, we saw what happened when Jimmy Butler missed a game. So that's really a race against time for them. I do love the Heat, but even if they advance and win this series, I have them losing to the Boston Celtics.
Yeah, I still like Boston in the East as it stands today. So,
okay, last question on big centers here, because we were talking about Embiid, we were talking about Jokic. Calvin, can you win a title with a center being your best player?
Yeah, I think you can.
Okay.
It just depends on who that center is, obviously, especially now in today's game, but I think you can.
Okay, let's talk about the Lakers here before we move on to the Sacramento Kings. First off, Calvin, does LeBron look old to you?
He looks older.
Older? He's not prime?
He's not. I don't know. He's definitely not prime LeBron anymore, but, I mean, he's still a very, very capable player. And, again, the moves that they made, the players they surrounded him with at the trade deadline were all fantastic moves. He looks a little bit older, but don't count out LeBron just yet.
I mean, we saw him fall down in that video the other day, just randomly in the game. He just fell down.
Yeah.
I've definitely seen him make some mental mistakes. Like I believe he was trying to inbound the ball and he messed that up, and just kind of some other small things. But of course, it's still LeBron James. And hey, shout out to him and his son. His son just declared to USC he's going to be the first one in that family to go to college. So very, very cool. Lane, we did talk about Jokic standing there and the Suns owner bumping into him. Yes, we talked about that. Last question, Calvin. It's about the Lakers here. D'Angelo Russell. Could he be the future of the Lakers? We know that LeBron wanted Anthony Davis to be that guy, and AD's playing pretty good, but he's also been injured.
Yeah.
D'Angelo Russell's pretty healthy. He's only, I believe, 26. This is his second stint with the Lakers. He made an all-star appearance with Brooklyn.
Yep.
He's bounced around. He seems to finally be fitting into a good spot here. And I think he seems to be, I don't know the word for it, but maybe more grateful to be on the Lakers this time. You think he could be the future of this Lakers squad?
I mean, it depends on what you mean by that, I guess. I would still consider as long as Anthony Davis is around,
Yeah.
he is the future of the LA Lakers. Future meaning after LeBron retires or moves to another team to play with his sons. I think D'Angelo Russell definitely has a future with this team and is going to be probably somebody that they look to build around, once it is time to make the decisions about whether they re-sign LeBron or if he's going to be there, if he's going to retire, all of that. I think D'Angelo Russell, like you said, it probably is taking things, much less for granted this second time around in LA. It also helps when you play on a team with Anthony Davis and LeBron James, right? You're going to get a lot of open looks.
Definitely.
That way. You're not going to get maybe the best defender every night. So that definitely helps him. I don't want to take away from what he's done because he has played very, very well. I think that in order for the Lakers to double down on saying this guy is the future of our franchise, they need to see it for a little bit longer, more sustained period of time than just this trade deadline to playoff run.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this offseason is going to be huge for them, right? D'Angelo Russell's a free agent. Do they choose to keep him and re-sign him? Do they go after Kyrie Irving? We'll see. But if the Lakers go to the NBA Finals like I'm predicting, it could include a couple big performances by D'Angelo Russell, and this could be his moment, right? If he shines, the lights are going to be on. If he steps into the spotlight and decides to, take it to the next level, he could be the future of the Lakers, in my opinion. So we will see what happens. In other news, the Bucks fire Coach of the Year, Coach Bud, after losing to the 8th seed Miami Heat in the first round of the playoffs. Calvin, is Coach Bud the one to blame? And 2, was Milwaukee's season a failure?
Oh man, tough questions. I believe I wrote both of those questions too, so now I'm beating up on myself. But he's the scapegoat, right? I mean, the coach is always the scapegoat if a team doesn't succeed. It's easy to get rid of him. I definitely don't think he's the only person to blame. Certainly deserves some of it, but it was their season of failure. Yeah, I mean, their expectation this year was to win an NBA championship. So if you don't do that, then, by definition, you failed from achieving your goal. I think what Giannis said in his post-game press conference after they were eliminated has a lot of truth to it. And, you certainly, I can only imagine how I would feel in that situation, being very competitive myself. You just got eliminated in the first round, upset, and those are the things that people want to poke and prod you with. It definitely would bother me. So I totally understand what he kind of was feeling in that moment and a lot of what he said. But at the end of the day, everyone in that organization expected that season that their goal was to win the NBA championship. They thought they were good enough. They had the best record in the NBA that season or this season. So yeah, I think by just pure definition of that, it was a failure.
Shout out to Sports Fury. Good to see you. I mean, I would double down, Calvin, and I would say the Milwaukee Bucks viewed last season as a failure, right? Because they thought they were going to get to the finals last year. Of course, they had an injury to Chris Middleton. This year, it falls apart in the first round. Coach Bud gets fired. Guys, listen, every coach gets fired. Basically every coach. You either retire or you get fired. So, it had to end one way. It's quite unfortunate. We saw it happen in Toronto with Nick Nurse getting fired. Maybe he ends up in Milwaukee.
Yeah.
They've been through quite a few coaches with Giannis, but hey, they won a title. So I think it all pays off for them. It will be interesting to see what happens next. Calvin, who do you think the next coach to be fired will be?
Steve Kerr, probably not. I would be pretty surprised by that. If Philadelphia ends up losing, I would definitely look at Doc Rivers as being a candidate for that. Yeah. You never really know. I mean, if Denver were to get quote-unquote upset by Phoenix here in this second round, maybe they decide they need to make a change. You never really know with teams like this that are in the hunt, competing for a title, think they're good enough to win. You know, a lot of these teams have a lot of young players or young core, so it's like, do you want to take another shot with this same group and the same coach? Is it time to get a new voice in there? I think it's tough to tell at this point for each individual organization. Monty Williams is probably on a little bit of a hot seat as well, given that they've been the number one seed in the Western Conference. They went all in with Kevin Durant. DeAndre Ayton has had his issues with the coach specifically. They've got a new owner. Maybe he decides, I want my guy in there. So that would definitely be a possibility as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. The reason I mentioned Steve Kerr, and no, I don't think he is the next coach to get fired, but the reason I mentioned Steve Kerr is if you look at the 5 last NBA champions, other than the Golden State Warriors, who are the reigning champs, every single one of those coaches was fired, Calvin.
Yeah.
I'm talking about Frank Vogel with the LA Lakers. I'm talking about Coach Bud, who just got fired. We mentioned Nick Nurse. And I think I'm missing one more guy in there, Calvin. Oh, who am I missing?
Who'd you say? Frank Vogel.
Bud.
Coach Bud.
Nick Nurse.
And, oh, man, no, I can't think of it either.
I mean, we could throw in the coach of the Celtics. They didn't even win a title. He got fired. But that's a lot of head coaches getting fired.
It is a lot.
If the Warriors lost in the first round of the playoffs, do you think they would fire Steve Kerr? Because
no, I don't.
I don't think he gets fired, but at the same time, I'm like, well, if they make a change in the GM department, maybe the coach is the first person to go.
Yeah.
I'm just hating.
Nothing is out of the realm of possibility, right? But what's the biggest difference between Kerr and all those other coaches?
Lots of rings.
He's won 4.
Yeah.
So I don't think that he really has to worry about his seat.
I'm looking up the rest of these champions because I know more people were fired, Calvin. More people were fired. So, Phoenix Suns. No, they weren't the... What is going on here? They did not win the title, Calvin. Why do they have them as the 2001 title winners? Hold on one second. Calvin, why am I blanking on this? Who won the last finals? Toronto Raptors, LA Lakers, Milwaukee Bucks, Golden State Warriors. Yeah, that sounds about right. Okay, we'll see what happens.
There you go.
We will definitely see what happens. Okay, next up.
Bottom line is Kerr's not getting fired.
Let's talk about the Sacramento Kings. Monty McNair, dude, I'm lighting the beam for this one, Calvin.
There you go.
Monty McNair wins Executive of the Year. He talks about building a championship contender. This is a list of awards that go to the Sacramento Kings this year. I mean, Malik Monk was in 6-man voting, didn't win the award. You had De'Aaron Fox wins the Clutch Player Award. Mm-hmm. You have Coach of the Year goes to Mike Brown. You have Executive of the Year goes to Monty McNair. Great year for the Sacramento Kings. Yes, they did lose in 7 games to the reigning NBA champs in the first round of the playoffs. However, they did a lot of winning this year, Calvin, something we're not really used to. So congratulations to Monty McNair for winning Executive of the Year. What do you have to say about it, Calvin?
It's deserved, right? I mean, absolutely. The guy made great move after great move going back to the Sabonis trade. He's pushed all the right buttons, brought in the right coach to lead this team, unlocked De'Aaron Fox. He did a fantastic job, and I think the Kings having this big turnaround this year, they caught everybody's eye, and he was an easy pick, in my opinion, for the award.
Yeah.
Not to say other guys weren't deserving, but he was an easy pick.
Yeah, shout out to Monty McNair. If anybody could turn around the Sacramento Kings, it's him. So, hey, feels pretty good. I'm feeling good about this offseason, Calvin. I am feeling good about this offseason. So let's talk about it. First off, I think the thing that everybody's talking about is we have a foreign prospect named Sasha Vezenkov. Potentially.
Vezenkov, or something like
Vezenkov.
that. Vezenkov?
Yeah.
Vezenkov.
Potentially coming to the NBA this offseason. We've seen De'Aaron Fox comment on it. We've seen a couple other NBA players comment on it. I mean, Calvin, MVP of the Euro League.
Yep.
What could he bring to Sacramento?
Well, he's a nasty left-handed shooter. I mean, just lethal from the outside. Has the right body type for an NBA wing. They like his basketball IQ a lot. I think what he's definitely going to bring first and foremost is that lethal shot, right? Just adding more three-point shooting to this team that's already got a bunch of it. It's still, playing in the EuroLeague and winning MVP, that's an amazing accomplishment. He should be able to fit into an NBA offense seamlessly. But with this team that kind of built up a lot of chemistry, already has some pretty clear roles defined, it'll be interesting to see what they do with the rest of the roster and how quickly he's able to break into the rotation and how many minutes he gets, right away.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see. Of course, if Monty thinks he deserves to come to the NBA, let's bring him to the NBA. I know a lot of guys are looking to play with him. We definitely need some more wing players. So I'd be interested to see what he looks like. Definitely better than some of the guys that we've had over the past couple of years. So, okay.
It's a good problem to have, right? If you have a team that just made this huge turnaround, had the best offensive rating in NBA history, and now you're talking about adding the EuroLeague MVP, who's a really, really good outside shooter. Like, it's a great problem for this team to have.
Dude can ball. Dude can definitely ball. We love to shoot threes here in Sacramento. All right, next up, Harrison Barnes. HB is currently not even with the team, I guess, right? He's a free agent.
He is a free agent.
Free agency doesn't start for like another month and a half or so. A lot of fans are very, very mixed on Harrison Barnes, whether they should bring him back. Didn't perform up to expectations this year in the playoffs. Calvin, what do you think? Where are you at?
I'd still love to see Harrison come back to the team. I just think that, we've talked about it a lot throughout the course of the season. To me, that the best way that this team could make a big step or another jump next season, and, if you listen to Monty McNair talking when he was awarded the Executive of the Year, he's definitely not settling, right? The focus is now, okay, we got over the playoff hump. Now it's how do we make this team a perennial playoff and championship contender? And so in my mind, one of the first moves that you would make would be an upgrade at the power forward position. That doesn't mean that Harrison Barnes is off the team altogether.
Yeah.
Maybe you could find somebody to take that starting spot, and then he re-signs for a little bit less money and comes off the bench. I think he's a very valuable person just to have in the locker room. Not quite like the Udonis Haslem type where he's been there for 20 years, but he's been there just as long as De'Aaron, tied for the longest tenured King, has the playoff and the championship experience that the young guys can lean on, is constantly talked about as being, one of the great just men in the NBA. I think that's a really good person to have in your locker room. So I would love to see him on the team. I just question whether or not the same role is the right move, having him be a starter and playing big-time minutes.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at as well. I do like HB. I like him as a person. I like him as a teammate. But I don't think he's the third best player on this team anymore. Or I don't think this team will be very successful with him being the third best player. So if he's willing to take a little bit of a pay cut, if he's willing to be that solid fourth guy, I think I'd be happy to have him. Now, I mean, that could mean a couple of different things. First off, that could mean that you bring him off the bench and you sign a starting quality four. Or that can mean Keegan Murray takes a huge step next year and he becomes the third best player on this team. I think the first situation is more likely to happen, at least in the short term. But we'll see what happens. I'm happy to have HB, but yeah, it's not going to be the same price that we paid him last time. Yeah. What do they say? Yeah, today's price is not yesterday's price.
Definitely.
So we'll see what happens. Where do you think Monty's at in this?
I think he's probably somewhere in the same boat. I mean, if as fans, we obviously get strong connections to players, and especially if they've been with your team for a long time, and they've been, very instrumental or critical players, along that timeline or that run. if you're the guy that puts the team together, you have to feel that even more amplified, right? Like, not that Monte McNair was the guy that brought Harrison Barnes to Sacramento, but he was part of the guy that turned this team around and helped construct the roster, culture builder, all of that. And you see firsthand the hard work that these guys put in, night in and night out, day in and day out. Barnes was one of only 2 starters in the NBA to play all 82 games this year.
Yeah.
That's a valuable thing in itself, right?
Very
so
valuable.
I'm sure that Monty really has a lot of respect for Harrison and would love for him to be a part of the team that gets over more humps, makes the NBA Finals, wins a title, all of that stuff, because of everything that Harrison has done for the community and for the team. But it's a business, and you've got a job to do, right? And Monty's job is to put the best possible team on the floor, and that may not include Harrison Barnes.
Tim says, we need someone to play the role Iguodala did with the Warriors back in the day, a vet willing to come off the bench and play his role to help the team. I would love that role for Harrison Barnes. I would absolutely love that role. And I think he would be willing to accept a role like that too. So definitely something to keep track of this offseason. I think the main objective this offseason for Monty is to sign Domantas Sabonis to a contract extension. He still has 1 year left on the deal, but I know he wants to get it done soon. I think we saw everything we needed to see this year to prove that Sabonis can be a good player on a good basketball team, and he means a lot to this team. So I hope they can get that extension done. We also heard that Sabonis has a few things that he plans on working on this offseason.
Yeah, he was interviewed saying, what's your biggest takeaway from this playoff experience with the Kings? And he said, I've got to become a better, I've got to be a more confident was the word that he used, shooter, mid-range shooter, outside shooter. It was pretty clear that the Warriors were daring him to shoot the basketball. They were leaving him wide open. And if you watch Nikola Jokic play, who's the guy that often, Sabonis gets compared to the most in terms of style and ability, and just, court vision, all of that stuff. All of that is great. But if if you can't shoot the ball and you're going to get left wide open and you don't look at the basket, it makes it a lot harder to make plays for others, right? Because you're basically playing 4-on-5 at that point. So I thought what he said was spot on. I think it's absolutely correct. Jokic has the ability to stretch the floor all the way out to the three-point line, and you cannot leave him open because he'll hit that shot. So I'm not saying Sabonis needs to come back next season and shoot 40% from three or anything like that, but if he's able to become a more confident and a more consistent mid-range and outside shooter, it will only open up the Sacramento Kings offense even more, and it'll make trying to take away what this offense did so well during the regular season in a playoff series that much harder as well.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Not only is it going to make the game much easier for Sabonis, but it's going to make it much easier for his teammates too when they have to respect that shot. So love an extension for Sabonis, and I love the idea that Sabonis is already looking to get back to work and things that he can do to improve himself and this roster for next season.
Everybody across the board on the team I thought, said really great things about what they need to do next year to come back better, and really specific things. Kevin Huerter talked about his conditioning level. The fact that they've got him. I think Willsie's stats, again, shout out to Will. He just does amazing work all year long. He had a stat showing how many miles Kevin Huerter has run over the course of every year in his career. And this season, it was like over 170. It was by far the most that he's done in his NBA career. And in the postseason, some of it was matchup maybe, but also I think perhaps he had a little bit of tired legs, and that wasn't getting him the right proper lift on his jump shot, which affected his outside shooting. So he said specifically, I've got to get in better shape, be able to play that style and that aggressively for an entire season and into the postseason.
Yeah, I would love to see that. And then, maybe have some more consistency in his jump shot. Definitely need a good Kevin Huerter next year. I think the main issue on a lot of Kings fans' mind, myself included this offseason, is what happens with Richaun Holmes. Richaun did not play much at all last year. He signed for 2 more years, Calvin. He's $12 million next year, and then he's got a $12.8 million player option the year after that. He's 29 years old now. I think he's still got some game left. The question is, does another team value him? Do they value him for $12 million, and are they willing to give the Kings anything for him? What do you think happens with Richaun Holmes this year?
Really hard to tell. I think what you said about what other teams value him is the most important part of this conversation, because look, the Kings are talking about at this point upgrades, right? It's how to get even further in the playoffs, how to become a championship contending team. With Mike Brown sticking with Alex Len, toward the end of the season there, and not really giving Richaun another opportunity late in the year, that makes me think that not that Richaun can't play or that he wouldn't have been able to contribute to this team. It just makes me think that the Kings don't have him in their future plans. Like his name has come up so many times in trade conversations for the last couple of years and in last off season. But the biggest problem with that is, like you said, what do other teams value him as? Because he's under contract, you're going to have to make a specific type of move in order to get him, find him a deal, and that's going to require a partner that values him, to a certain degree, a $12 million degree, right? So it will be really interesting to see what happens with Richaun Holmes this summer.
And if you don't find a team that values him for that, then obviously you're going to have to give something up to get rid of a guy like this. And the toughest part is that player option for $12.8 million the year after that. So it is a sticky situation. We'll see what happens. Calvin, the Kings have multiple guys currently as free agents: Harrison Barnes, Terrence Davis, Alex Len, Trey Lyles, Chimezie Metu, Matthew Dellavedova. Out of all these guys, who's your top priority to re-sign here?
It's probably going to be Trey Lyles for me. I mean, again, they just, as of right now, they're pretty thin as it is at power forward. He was a critical part of the second unit, a guy that could really fit in seamlessly with the second unit or with the starting lineup. Had a really productive year overall. I would probably put him at the top. I like Terrence Davis a lot, but I also think that there's going to be a ton of wings that are available in free agency that perhaps the Kings prioritize higher than him or try to make a big move to go after, and that's going to, eventually have ripple effects on the roster, and somebody's going to be left out. It would probably be Terrence Davis for me.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. You mentioned free agency. Are there any big free agent targets, if you're the Kings, you're looking at?
Well, I've seen a lot of, hypothetical situations here. Will Z-Stats, again, has been putting out his wish list of free agent players, and he has a lot of wings on that wish list. I've seen guys like Kelly Oubre, even Chris Middleton, who's a restricted free agent, I think, this season. Player option. Naz Reid has been up there, who I've been talking about since preseason last year as a guy that, you could get maybe trending upwards, right? So like you could buy low and sell high on a guy like Naz Reid, perhaps to be your backup center. Yeah. There's a lot of different ways that you could go here. I think that a two-way wing player makes a lot of sense for this team.
What do you think about a guy like Kevin Love? Can play power forward, can play center, can shoot the three ball, also a great rebounder, something the Kings have lacked. Not the best defender, not the best rim protector, but he is an unrestricted free agent. He just moved on from Cleveland to Miami. What would your thoughts be on maybe picking up a guy like Kevin Love?
Well, my question would be, how much of a discount are you willing to take, Kevin, to come to Sacramento and be a part of this team? Because I definitely would not want to pay him, north of $18 million a year. I just don't think that for the production you're going to get and perhaps even the number of years that he's going to play, you're not going to get that type of value for that much money. So I do think stylistically it's a very interesting fit, a guy that can still stretch the floor, allows Sabonis to continue to play the same role, position, style, all of that, another really great passing big man, good rebounder as well, like you said. Definitely, lost a step or two, and this team needs to get better on defense. But from an offensive standpoint, I think he would fit in perfectly. I just wouldn't really be willing to pay him a lot of money, and I definitely think that there's better options out there at starting power forward than Kevin Love.
Yeah, the dude's going to be 35. I don't think he would command a huge paycheck to come to Sacramento. You might even be able to get him on a 1 or 2 year deal. Who makes this team better? If you re-sign Harrison Barnes as your 4, or if you bring in Kevin Love as your 4?
Oh, wow, that's tough. I'm not so sure. I mean, if you were to tell me that Kevin Love was going to play, 60 or more games throughout the course of the regular season, I'd probably say that Kevin Love would make them a little bit better. I don't think that they would be a much better defensive team, but they might overall be a slightly better team with him in there if he was going to play a lot. But is he going to be available that many games? I don't know. Do you want to rely on him to be available that many games? I don't know. Jeremy Grant's another name that's been thrown around out there as well. I would be interested to see, not again known as a really great defender, but certainly a younger guy who can really fill it up. I think proved a lot of doubters wrong this year in Portland, even though they didn't have a successful season. The question was, can he play on a team where he's, that's not a lottery team? I'm putting words in my mouth here. They are a lottery team, but I think that's because of injuries, right? They didn't have Damian Lillard. This was probably one of the more talented teams in recent years that he's played on. Could he still be a productive player on that team, or is he just a 20-point per game scorer on a nothing team? I think that he is more the first than the latter in that conversation, but he would be a guy that I'd be more interested in signing long-term than somebody like Kevin Love.
Yeah, shout out to Key Kings for joining in here. I mean, Calvin Brooke Lopez is a free agent. Kyle Kuzma.
That's a really interesting one, because then you have to basically change the style of offense that you play. Even though Brooke can stretch the floor and shoot threes a lot, he's definitely going to be in the paint, a lot as well. So it would change things.
Kyle Kuzma, player option.
Yeah.
Christian Wood, free agent. You mentioned Jeremy Grant. Karis LeVert's a free agent. A lot of different options here for the Sacramento Kings. So it should be a very, very exciting free agency period. And we'll definitely have a bunch more podcasts here talking about that. In other news, Calvin, an important date here coming up in 9 days that if you're a Kings fan, you don't even care about. And that is the NBA Draft Lottery, Tuesday, May 16th. Cal, we don't have a lottery pick.
It's so weird. They don't care about the lottery at all.
That is absolutely crazy. If you've been living under a rock the past year, the Kings have been pretty good. They're slotted to pick 24 currently in the draft this year. Calvin, any guys here? I know things change a lot in the next couple months, but any guys you're really looking to target here with the 24th pick?
Yeah, I mean, it does change so much. I see you've got it up there. Colby Jones from Xavier, his name has come up a lot. I do like him a lot as a player. I would love to watch a little bit more film on him. Everybody wants Keegan's brother, Chris. Everybody that I hear who is a fan of the Sacramento Kings wants Chris Murray. He is a very good player as well. I just wonder if there might be a better option. It's just going to depend on how the draft shakes out. I was really, really hoping that Taylor Hendricks was going to be available for them late in the 20s or in the mid-20s. That's definitely not going to happen anymore. That would have been my top pick. I like Colby a lot. Julian Swather is another good fit, as Charlie points out here. And shout out to Charlie. I see him on Twitter always diving in deep on draft prospects, which I can really appreciate. I love to do that as well, and I appreciate his information and his knowledge on the subject. So Julian Strother, great player from Gonzaga, very highly recruited player out of high school. I think it again is so early. You have to wait to see how the lottery shakes out to see whether or not there's going to be a team that you think somebody's going to try to crack in the top 10, move up. Is some team going to want to trade back, things like that. It's still kind of in the research and development stage, I would say. Yeah. If they end up with a player like Chris Murray, I think that would be the Kings could do a lot worse than that for sure.
Yeah, shout out to everybody that's listening via Twitter Spaces. If you've requested to come up on stage, I apologize. It's not letting me bring anybody up on stage right now. But Calvin, in terms of the draft here, I think the Kings need to approach this draft a little differently than years past, right? Like I've been saying all year long, we're playing with house money here. I would really be looking at this pick not in terms of a specific player. Of course, if there's a guy that just, blows you out of the park and you're like, we need this guy, I would go for him. But I'm looking at this pick more of, let's see who falls. Let's see who falls in the draft. Because this year, the Kings, I think, are able to take a little bit more of a gamble in the draft and say that, hey, maybe this guy was ranked 2 or 3 in the wings and he should have been picked number 12. He fell to 24th because of this or that reason. I think the Kings have a little bit of an ability here to gamble with this pick and pick somebody that could be huge for the Kings or could totally fall out of the rotation and won't greatly affect them.
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested to see what Monty's just whole kind of attitude is in this draft process here. Like, having been with the Rockets and now the Kings for the last few years, they've had a decent number of lottery picks and a lot of chances to pick highly touted players. Does you're talking about trying to take the next step in being a perennial contender in the Western Conference, how aggressive are you going to be? Are they going to look to try to trade up maybe in this draft and go after somebody that they really, really like? Are they going to say, well, we probably don't have a good chance of trading up, and maybe, the players that we really like in this draft, we're very confident they're not going to fall to 24. So do we try to add more capital and trade out of 24 altogether, or trade the 24th pick for a player that's going to be in the rotation next season? It'll be really interesting to see their draft strategy this year, coming off the year that they had and picking so close to the end of the first round for the first time in a very, very long time.
Yeah, Charlie points out here Maxwell Lewis from Pepperdine might have some connections with assistant coach Doug Christie, so we could see some stuff.
Kessler Edwards happen there. Pepperdine as well.
Kessler Edwards as well. Another thing to point out that's pretty important, the Kings cannot trade this pick before the draft. However, they can draft a specific player for a team and trade them after the draft. That's due to that Kevin Huerter deal. They owe next year's draft pick to the Atlanta Hawks. So currently cannot trade this draft pick, but they can do it during the draft. Calvin, quick question here from Key Kings. Would you take on Dariq Whitehead if he falls to us?
I have to watch a little bit more of him. At this point, sitting here today, I would probably say no. But I have to probably watch just a little bit more. There are a bunch of players that I like more than him in this draft.
All right. Duke loves guys with lower leg injuries. Yes, they do. And they've also pumped out quite a few good prospects as well. Calvin, I think that pretty much wraps us up today. Did you have any other hot topics, any NBA things that you just got to get out of you?
Man, we've covered a lot. I don't think I've got much more. Thanks, everybody, for sticking around, until we got to the Kings stuff at the end. There's just – we love to talk basketball. There's so much going on right now. It's easy to kind of gloss over anything, whether it's Kings or not. But appreciate all of you sticking around to watch, and man, we'll be back hopefully sooner than later.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Calvin, put on some sunscreen next time. You're looking a little burnt here. But thank you all so much for watching. Please don't forget to smash up that like button, hit that subscribe button, and hey, hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on the next live. But appreciate you all so much. Have a wonderful evening. In the meantime, go Kings.